Welcome to Coach Taylor's class video, and today we're going to be combining all of the exponent rules that we have learned into one problem. So first off, we're going to remember what happens when our exponent is 0. So when we have x to the 0, it simply equals 1. When I have 3x to the 0, it equals 3. When I have parentheses, 3x to the 0, the whole thing equals 1. And the other thing I want to remind us of is if we have a negative exponent, so if I have x to the negative 4th, I'm going to turn it into a fraction, and I'm going to flip it, and when I flip it, the x becomes positive. Okay, so that's just a real quick reminder of a couple of rules. So, what rules do we do first when we have multiple rules going on? So the first rule that we want to do first is we want to do parentheses first. So what parentheses do first is that raises the power. And when we raise the power, we multiply exponents. Once we raise everything to the power, we want to multiply across. So when we multiply across, that tells us that we need to add exponents. And then our final step is that we want to divide. And when we divide exponents, that tells us to subtract exponents. All right, so let's look at a couple of problems. I'm going to do my best to try and keep the steps color-coded so that you can follow along. All right, so in this first problem, I do not have any parentheses. So if I don't have any parentheses, the first thing I want to do is I want to multiply across. So this little multiplication dot tells me that I need to do this side first. So when I multiply, I need to multiply my coefficients. So here my invisible coefficient is 1. So I'm going to go 4 times 1. Then I need to write down my bases of my exponents, and then I need to add. So if I have x to the 2, my invisible exponent is 1, so we go 2 plus 1. Then I write down my next base, which is y, and I'm going to add my exponents. 2 plus 2. So on the bottom, there is no multiply, so I'm just going to rewrite the bottom. 2x squared y squared. So now, 4 times 1 is 4. My exponent of x, 2 plus 1 is 3. And my exponent of y is 2 plus 2 is 4. And now we rewrite the bottom. 2x squared y squared. So our last step is going to be we need to divide. So I'm going to take my coefficients, and I'm going to divide my coefficients. I'm going to write down my first base, which is x, and I'm going to subtract my exponents. Then I'm going to write down my second base, which is y, and I'm going to subtract my exponents. So here, 4 divided by 2 is simply 2. 3 minus 2 is x to the 1, and 4 minus 2 is y squared. And that is how we simplify that exponential problem. All right, so in this first problem, I immediately see that we have parentheses. So we have to raise everything in the parentheses to the power. So the first step is I need to write down my coefficient, and I need to raise my coefficient to the power. So 2 to the 3rd. Then my invisible exponent of x is 1, so I need to write down my base, and then I need to bring the 1 to the power, so that means I multiply 1 times 3. Then I write down my y, and I need to multiply 5 times 3. There are no parentheses on the bottom, so I'm just going to rewrite the bottom. So now let's do that math. So 2 to the 3rd is 8. I get x to the 3rd, y to the 15th, and then again, I'm just going to rewrite the bottom. 2x to the 3rd, y to the 8th. Now, I do not have any multiplication, so I can simply go straight to divide. So I need to divide 8 by 2. Divide tells me I need to subtract, So I'm going to take my x's, I'm going to go 3 minus 3, and then I need to subtract my y's, 15 minus 8. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, 3 minus 3 is x to the 0, and then y is 15 minus 8, which is 7. So I need to simplify because I know that x to the 0 is 1. So 4 times 1, my x completely goes away, and I'm left with y to the 7th. And so my final answer is 4y to the 7th. All right, so I see the parentheses, and I immediately deal with the parentheses first. So I've got -2, and I need to raise my -2 to the power. My invisible exponent of both x and y are 1, so I'm going to go x 1 times 2, y 1 times 2. I don't have any parentheses anywhere else, so I'm just going to write down what they are. So now I need to simplify what I have. So -2 squared, remember to put it in parentheses. So I'm going to end up with 4 x to the 2, y to the 2, times 10 x to the 3rd, y to the 11th, over 8x to the 10th, y to the 4th. So now I have my multiplication dot, which tells me I need to multiply across. So I need to multiply my coefficients. So 4 times 10. Then I need to add my exponents. So I have x to the 2 plus x to the 3. And then I need to do my y's, which is 2 plus 11. There's nothing to multiply on the bottom, so I'm just going to write it down. All right, so now I need to simplify what I've got. So 4 times 10 is 40, x to the 5th, y to the 13th, all over 8, x to the 10, y to the 4th. So now I need to divide. So I need to go 40 divided by 8, and I need to subtract my exponents. X is 5 minus 10, y 13 minus 4. So when we simplify, 40 divided by 8 is 5. I get x to the -5, and I get y to the 9th. So remember, we cannot have negative numbers in our exponents. So when it comes time to simplify this, I need to flip this to the bottom of my fraction. So I'm going to write 5y to the 9th, and it's all going to be over x to the 5th. And that is my answer. All right, again, we've got a parentheses. Parentheses tell me that I need to raise everything to the power. So -8 squared, and again, we got to put that in parentheses. X to the 3rd times 2, y to the 2nd times 2. Nothing else has parentheses, so we're simply going to write it down as it is. So now I need to simplify. So I should get 64 x to the 5th, y to the 4th times 2x squared, y to the 6th, over 32 x to the 8th, y to the 3rd. So now I need to deal with my multiplication sign and multiply across. So I get 64 times 2, x 5 plus 2, y 4 plus 6, all over 32 x to the 8th, y to the 3rd. So 64 is 128, or 64 times 2 is 128. We get x to the 7th, y to the 10th, all over 32 x to the 8th, y to the 3rd. So now I need to divide. So 128 divided by 32. When I divide exponents, that means I subtract y 10 minus 3. So let me grab my calculator to make sure I'm doing this math correctly. So 128 divided by 32 is 4. So I get 4. 7 minus 8 is -1. 10 minus 3 is 7. So I cannot leave this x to the negative 1 here. I need to flip it to the bottom of the fraction. So I get 4y to the 7th, and I get x. Because remember, if it's x to the 1, I do not need to write the number down. All right, I want you to try these next two on your own and check the completed notes on Canvas.